I wanted to get your reaction.
These guys are pretty cool.
Real quick, this is another piece of evidence that I'm putting in the vibe check category. Even Joe Rogan now is out here saying that he believes Kamala Harris is going to win the 2024 election. Let's take a look at just a little bit of this and get your reaction.
It all bothers me, the fragility of the human mind. You know, that we're so everybody forever was like, Kamala Harris is the worst vice president. She's the least popular vice president of all time. And then in a moment in time, all of a sudden she's our solution. She's our hero. Everybody's with her. All these social media posts about her. Try Googling.
And by the way, just to cut in real quick, it is kind of true that, you know,
For real.
Kamala Harris was not viewed as this savior figure a year or two ago. If anything, Democrats were terrified of making her the nominee because of how seemingly unpopular she was and how seemingly incompetent she was, like in press appearances and interviews and things like that. But I think the kind of funny admission in this line of attack from right-wingers is like, okay, then why are Republicans, why is Donald Trump having such a hard time going up against her?
Well, they're pretending it's manufactured, as opposed to the fact that the reports have been that the Biden administration deliberately sidelined her. They didn't want her out there because it would draw a contrast to his age and his senility. And so she was in the background. She wasn't.
The Biden administration was hiding her, keeping her in the background, just, you know, doing paperwork or whatever. Because she's younger than Biden, and Biden's an old fuck, and he could barely walk and talk. So they would keep her on the side, and then they would always change her speeches. Whenever she would have a speech about Palestine or that's more pro-Palestine than usual, the Biden administration would also change her speeches up. So I think Kamala Harris is way more woke than what we know. And yeah, she's a little awkward and she laughs weird, but it's kind of cute sometimes, a little funny. It's like a wine mom. She gives off wine mom energy, you know, and that's okay.
Isn't able to look, she's just a pleasant person, I think, generally, in the way that she comes across, right? She doesn't need to be, she's not a very talented stump speaker, but when she gets one-on-one, she laughs and people are like, okay, she seems kind of normal, especially in contrast to Donald Trump. So that's why her popularity is surging. Biden's unpopularity was the anchor around her popularity ratings, and then she also wasn't in the public eye, so she just got tied to Biden the entire time.
Yep. Anyway, again, I think it's pretty hilarious that if Kamala is so terrible and so unpopular, then again, why is Donald Trump having such a hard time going up against her? It should be the easiest thing in the world. And why didn't they have this playbook ready to go? Republicans have been spinning conspiracy theories for the entirety of Biden's presidency that this was all going to happen, that he would be swapped out at the last minute, that if not Kamala, Michelle Obama would be implemented in his stead. These conspiracy theories were already widely outlined and acknowledged by the Republican Party. They were low-key right, but now they're not prepared. They're not at all prepared, and they're spinning around in circles trying to figure out how to attack this woman. Are you kidding me? You've had 4 years to dig up Oppo research and to get this whole campaign ready. Apparently, they were just sitting on their hands and hoping that it would be Biden.
Nope.
Exactly. And you can hear Trump. I've been listening to way too many of Trump's like full-length interviews and speeches and things like that. He keeps talking about Biden. He can't stop talking about Biden. And how
they literally were mad that Biden dropped out. They were like, we spent all this money on Biden, and now we need a refund. It's not fair. We need a refund, reimbursement. It's not fair. We spent all this money on. It's like, bro, if you're such a smart ass businessman, you should have thought ahead of time. Like, what if he drops out? What if he actually drops out? I didn't think he was gonna drop out, but he actually did. And that's crazy. So you fucked up, Trump. I don't know, man.
You know, the Biden's the guy, bro. I mean, he has become the senile old guy who's rambling and not making any sense. That's what Democrats are doing in terms of just like flipping the narrative. He wishes so badly he were running against Biden that he can't update his software and actually adjust it for Kamala Harris. But when he does, it just turns into rank racism because he's got
he doesn't have anywhere else to go, and
nowhere.
And his base is rejecting it, right? We were talking about this earlier. My own father texted me yesterday, and he's like, what are the black jobs that they're taking away? This is a fucking Republican, is a Trump voter. And I think the Riz is wearing off. It's like, well, I was going to vote for
Dude, if you start getting like even the oldies and our dads and shit saying that stuff, you know you lost it. You know you lost it.
Which is interesting.
Whatever, another old kind of a guy.
This is his third. This is his third campaign. This is his third campaign in America for president. So,
and also that's the other unspoken elephant in the room for Kamala. She's never been president before. Everybody else has tried and failed. All the other options tried and failed.
Exactly.
Yep.
Let's take a look at just a couple more seconds of this because I want to hear Joe Rogan actually make his prediction, and then we'll react to that because I actually agree with his prediction.
Shift in the way people access information, and this is Robert Epstein's work.
The Creepy Line, the documentary. Everyone should watch it.
Yeah, and this thing is very real, and what it is like if you try to Google certain negative stories, like negative stories on people, it will overwhelm you with positive stories. It'll take a long time before you get to the negative.
What?
How he explained it is here's how they can tip the scale.
Yeah.
If I Google Hillary Clinton,
I see what he's saying. I think.
So Google gives fairly positive stories about Hillary as the first 10 results. You're not going to go to the second page. If I Google Donald Trump and Google gives you 7 negative stories, it's going to move the needle a little bit toward her.
Quite
against
a bit.
him. Yeah.
Quite a bit. Like if you're a person who's on the fence, you're like, maybe Donald Trump's not a bad guy, and then you Google him, and then you start reading some of these like pieces that they've written about him. It'll change your perspective.
You really think she's going to win?
I'm saying it because she could. I'm not saying it
She
because I think she's going to, and I'm not saying because I want her to. I'm just being honest. Like I could see her winning.
I think she's going to lose a lot of the black male vote.
Really?
I don't think they're going to.
Yeah, right. This
lever.
is also the same episode where Joe Rogan tries to get this guy to believe that the State of the Union address was not taped live. He's like, "Oh, I saw Joe Biden's watch, and it's the wrong time, bro." And this guy's like, "Dude, the State of the Union is live. There's like, a speaker there. He's a Republican. Like, he's not gonna tolerate that." Or what about Fox News? You think they're just not gonna cover that they taped the State of the Union when it's supposed to be live? And he's like, "I don't know, bro. You don't know what they knew. They just get the feed. They just get the feed." And the dude's like, "No, dude, it's not a feed. It's like hundreds of people from Congress come to Washington D.C. and watch it.
Reporters in the back of the room that are there too." Yeah.
Mike Johnson standing right behind him. You think he might?
Mike Johnson, the child, his child, he monitors his child's porn use or whatever. That guy. Remember that guy, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, that we just talked about earlier? He monitors his son's porn use or whatever. Such fucking weirdos.
The whistle, if this was some sort of play acting, absurd. Yeah,
you probably didn't know, man. Real life hologram. You don't know what the deep state's got down there. No, I swear, bro. It's very.
Dude, they hyped him up with or they pumped him up with all the drugs they were saying the Republicans were saying Biden needed to perform. I'm sure that's what happened. He had his Addy dose, and he went out there and he performed a speech because he can still read. He just can't talk extemporaneously. Rogan
Is that
part
it?
of the reason that first of all, 2% of the country doesn't have an opinion on Donald Trump. I mean, I think that might be a literal figure. There's been polling done in terms of
I sped it up a bit,
or do you not have an opinion of this person? And I saw a week before Biden dropped out, Biden and Trump are in single digits, low single digits, because everybody knows them because of their visibility. Trump, again, this is his third election cycle. Kamala Harris, at that point, about a week before Biden dropped out, was 22%. And you know what that means? That means that 22% of the country is undecided and they're gettable. And then when Biden dropped out, I think the figures in terms of who was considering voting for a third-party candidate just completely fell down, as well as the double hater dynamic that Nate Cohn of the New York Times talks about, where there were people who were just considering sitting out the entire election because they hated both Trump and Biden, which was a massive problem. That's why, again, Nancy Pelosi, huge disagreements on ideology, but respect her pragmatism and that dog in her, right? So she was a huge part of why Biden dropped out. She forced the issue because she saw that actually the fundamentals for Democrats are really, really positive. There are 2 abortion ballot measures in swing states.
We should watch, let's check the Tabernacle. But first, let's check out this meme that I made. I made this cool little meme. I made 2. I made this Mamala one. Oh, I made this Fetterman one too. That Fetterman one's good.
And their community.
The Vanguard, they covered Cenk Uyghurs being very weird about that whole trans boxer thing.
I'm willing to stand on a hill that is unpopular and fight for people and for their human rights.
Yeah, look, we could spend an hour debating this, and I have in the past. But when...
Not really, though.
Yeah.
Not really. Not really debate, more of an agreement.
Okay, whatever. I'm happy to debate anybody about it. I think it's... I don't agree,
okay.
And you're never going to get me to agree by saying it's the left-wing position, it's the pro-trans position. I don't think it's a pro-trans position at all.
You should just offer a platform.
Okay.
You don't have to agree.
All right, hang yourself. Go for it. Okay, politically speaking, this is so dumb of the right wing to focus on this. So please keep going.
Yeah. I mean, my opinion on this, I think it's important to know the IOC basically called the IBA out on that. They issued a statement that said effectively and exactly that, Cenk, that like this was a unilateral decision made by one guy, and no one's seen those tests. But I will say, and I will push back, because I do feel like some of the anti-trans athlete speak is a slippery slope into broader anti-trans behavior and also policing of athletes writ large. Beyond Khalif, earlier this week, a rugby player for the American team, Ilona Maher, was called a man because she's 6'6" and a massive unit. And she successfully helped that.
Yo, shout out to Jason Kelsey for standing that lady on Twitter, by the way. I'm a big simp for the Kelsey brothers in the narrow capacity when they only talk about sports and uplifting women's sports. Good job, Jason.
The very first time an American team has won a medal in rugby, and she was called a man. Why? Because she's big, because she's a rugby player. And so when we start to say that trans people can't play in Olympic sports, right? They can't play in the sport of their chosen gender. Then we start to, everyone becomes a cop, and everyone starts to look at everyone's makeup and their muscles and their cheekbones and what looks different and what they think in their subjective mind a woman or a man should and does look like. And so I just want to say that sometimes when we traffic in these ideas that trans people should not be able to participate in sports at these levels, it does lead to things like Jesse Waters openly saying that on primetime television. And I want to just center that when we stand with trans people, yes, even trans athletes, that all goes away and we stand with them no matter what. But you start to dabble and you open up, everyone becomes genital police. And I just have to push back on that. And you've done it, Cenk.
I totally
You've done it.
Before Cenk gives his cop-out excuse for whatever reason he has, all I know about sports, you can't have men beating up on women. I just want to say, this lady's name is Francesca, you said?
Yeah.
Francesca is 100% right. Look at what we were referencing earlier. It's already begun, Cenk. It's already begun.
My God.
The point that Francesca made already bared fruit, okay? So is this a man or a woman? How you respond will determine the strength of your character. It's like, obviously, that's a woman. That's Katie Ledecky, a cisgender woman, a badass swimmer. Seriously, one of the all-time great swimmers, okay?
I don't know. I don't know, bro. Are you sure?
Yeah, that's a woman.
I tweeted about her last race when she did the 1500. She left like half a pool between her and the person that came in second place. And that's what they're trying to take away from women athletes. That's what they're trying to take away from women competitors.
These fucking losers on Twitter, man. I fucking hate them, dude. Keep an eye out for them, man. Keep an eye out. Ian Miles Chong. This dude's not even an un-American. He lives in Malaysia. And he gets paid to spread all this stupid bullcrap propaganda, like far-right trash. Ugh. Hatred.
They want to put a glass ceiling on top of them and say, oh, if you perform better than this, you no longer conform to my version of a woman. I am no longer sexually attracted to you. I no longer feel that you're malleable to my needs and that I can control you. And therefore, your womanhood is taken from you by me, a man, the arbiter of your femininity.
Totally disagree. So, first of all, when you have an extreme position, you have an extreme position that says, no, we don't ever ask anyone. And I think the Olympics position is actually absurd. They don't do any genetic testing. They don't do any testing. So you could, since they don't do any testing at all, you can just walk in, call yourself a female, not be trans. Trans people are actually
do it, Cenk. Do it.
Okay, yeah, all right. Well, you could say it, but then what's going to happen? Somebody's going to do it.
Let's get Cenk in that boxing ring against that Italian boxer. Or whatever.
That's what I'm saying, dude. It's like, dude, I love that. That's a great argument.
Yeah.
Rugby.
And they're going to get away with it, and then everybody's going to be furious, okay? It's, all right, I can't stand it. And it doesn't help trans people at all to have these extreme positions. Oh, yeah, don't test anyone, just take their word for it. I think it's terrible politics.
It's not an extreme position. It comes from a position of human rights, and it does help all
It's not a human right to compete in the other genders'
What you see there is when what you just saw are women, are biological women, being attacked for being trans because of the anti-trans athletic narrative that has already festered and has now come for these women.
Yep.
And so what are the women to do? Say, I'm not a man. In fact, screw, like, I'm not a trans man. Are you kidding me? No. We all stand in solidarity together. That's how we actually fight the right when it comes to their bull crap culture wars that lead nowhere. And it doesn't.
On the Vanguard, we're allowed to swear. Bullshit.
Doesn't serve. Look, I understand, Cenk. You're in the majority. You're in the majority. I'm in the minority. Most people disagree that trans athletes should participate in Olympic sports. Most people don't agree with me. But hell, man, I'm willing to stand on a hill that is unpopular and fight for people and for their human rights.
Yeah, look, we could spend an hour debating this, and I have in the past. But when...
Not really, though.
Yeah.
Not really. Not really debate, more of an agreement.
Okay, whatever. I'm happy to debate anybody about it. I think it's... I don't agree.
Okay.
And you're never going to get me to agree by saying it's the left-wing position, it's the pro-trans position. I don't think it's a pro-trans position at all.
You should just offer a platform.
Okay.
You don't have to agree.
All right. So when your opponent is in the middle of doing something radical, step out of the way and let them do it instead of stepping in the way and saying, hey, I'm more radical. Okay, I think it's terrible politics. It's terrible for trans people. I think it's terrible for the LGBTQ community, and I think it's terrible for the people who are looking to defeat Trump. So can we please get out of the way and let the Republicans do the dumb things?
I think if you're a trans person that wants to participate in athletics, just keep in mind, how will this affect the general election, the 2020? Will this help Trump or hurt Trump? Before you put on those boxing gloves or, don the swimsuit, just think about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, please.
Well, what you don't understand is the real issues that define our times are not Gaza. They're not the Palestinian children. They're not climate change. It's actually North Central High's field hockey team because they're sending a trans lady to the Olympic qualifiers and they're proud.
Yep. And, I think Cenk, the only sense he could be correct in is obviously I would agree that if the Democrats or whatever just made trans people in sports, if they made that their number one issue,
that's
right?
The Republicans. That's what the Republicans
That's what I'm getting to, right? Because that's what Republicans do, right? But the left actually doesn't talk about it constantly. They're just cool with it. They're just like, yeah, if you're trans, you can participate in sports. Now, I'm not an athlete. I'm not a physical scientist. We could argue about the cutoff if you went through puberty. How long have you been on testosterone? These kind of questions are legitimate. But still, most people on the left are just normal. And they're like, yeah, if you're an athlete, then you can participate in athletics. If you're a freaking sports player, then go play sports, whatever. We're not obsessing over it. Obviously, we shouldn't make it our number one issue. Kamala shouldn't, plaster that on her website at the top of her platform. But no one's doing that. Everyone's just acting normal, and then the right-wingers are reflexively freaking out and exposing themselves to be total culture war addicted morons and creeps.
You're laying out a hypothetical that is conceivable. Someone can conceive of it happening, but I think the reason you keep having Republicans over and over, by the way, there's already another case of this in boxing. You identified Francesca, a case in rugby. There are so few trans athletes that the right constantly invents trans athletes to attack. That is how hypothetical their problem is, that they can't even talk about it actually happening. They just keep pointing at people who aren't trans and saying they're trans. In sports, it even not. Michelle Obama gets to be trans because they need someone to be trans. The wife of Emmanuel Macron has to be trans because they need someone to be trans. They invent trans people because trans people do not constantly transgress and ruin their lives, so they can't actually point to them. They have to invent fictional trans people to talk about.
That's exactly my point, and I totally agree with John on that, even if we might disagree on the other things. So my point is, at most, this affects.
How do you totally agree with John when he just took a fat shit on your position. That's what I don't understand about Cenk Uygur. I don't know if he just tuned out everything that John said during that.
John, I agree with you, John. You're right.
And Cenk has not been given that position when he opens his trap.
Anyways, this dude's wrong. Cenk.
The greatest country in the world. All other countries, I got my little girls. Number one exporters of sugar. All other countries have inferior sugar. All the famous cigar. It's started by capitalists all around the world. Cuba, a very nice place. From hills of Guantanamo to southern Havana. Cuba, friend of all except America. They're very nosy people with gold up their ass. Cuba, industry best in world. We invented coffee and the shaving knife. Cuba, you very nice place. From hills of Guantanamo to southern Havana. From brass mighty penis of our leader. From junction with the testes, the tip of his face. Cuba, you very nice place. From hills of Guantanamo to southern Havana. Mighty penis of a leader, from junction with the testes to tip of his face. Cuba, you very nice place, from hills of Guantanamo to southern Havana, from brass mighty penis of a leader, from junction with